Virginia, 1800. The air is heavy with summer heat, the kind that clings to the skin and turns the horizon into a haze of gold and smoke. In the fields outside Richmond, sweat falls like rain from the brows of enslaved men, their hands blistered from the earth. Chains rattle softly, a rhythm no one chooses to hear. Not far from the fields stands a small forge, its heart glowing red beneath the hammer of a young man named Gabriel. He is tall, broad-shouldered, and quiet, the kind of man whose silence draws respect. Each strike of his hammer sends sparks into the dusk, as though he's forging not just metal, but meaning. Gabriel belongs to Thomas Prosser, a wealthy planter whose estate lies along Brook Creek, a few miles from Richmond. To the world, Gabriel is property, but within him burns something dangerous: thought. He listens when white men talk of liberty and independence. He remembers the whispers about a revolution in a faraway place called Haiti, where the enslaved rose and claimed the land as their own. And he wonders, why do words like freedom and justice belong only to certain tongues? When Gabriel shapes iron, he imagines shaping fate itself. The glowing metal bends beneath his hammer, screaming before it yields. He sees himself in that fire, tested, changed, never broken. Each blow is a promise whispered into the smoke. One day, these hands will shape more than chains. The nights are long, and the air smells of rain and rust. Across the fields, the enslaved gather quietly, their voices low, but their hope high. They talk about Gabriel, the blacksmith who can read, who speaks calmly, but whose eyes flash like lightning when injustice walks by. They call him teacher, leader, even prophet. By day, he obeys the world as it is. By night, he dreams of the world as it should. He has seen enough cruelty to understand the cost of silence. He has seen wits crack and backs bleed. He has seen mothers unalive with grief as their children are sold. He knows that freedom is a fire. It can warm or it can burn, but it cannot be contained. That summer, storms gather more often. Thunder rolls over Richmond like a warning drumbeat. The soil cracks, the rivers rise, and people speak of omens. But Gabriel sees in those clouds not punishment, but prophecy. He believes nature itself is restless, as if the earth can no longer bear injustice. In the distance, Richmond shines with wealth, brick homes, church bells, laughter from open windows. But even there, behind curtains and sermons, the white citizens whisper of fear. They've heard of Haiti. They've heard of the enslaved taking arms and turning the world upside down. And though they sleep under roofs built by other hands, they know those same hands could one day tear the roofs down. Gabriel watches all of it. The arrogance, the blindness, the faith the chains will last forever. He knows better. Metal fatigues, chains rust, even iron under enough fire remembers how to melt. When night finally falls, he walks the edge of the fields, the hammer still warm in his hand. The stars above are sharp, bright, as if the sky itself has been pierced by hope. He breathes deep and feels the storm in his chest. Something is coming. He cannot yet name it, but it hums in the air, in the swing of his hammer, in the quiet strength of every man and woman who refuses to bow completely. Freedom, he thinks, is not a gift. It's a forging. Before he was a rebel, Gabriel was a craftsman, a man whose gift with iron earned him a strange sort of respect, even from those who claimed to own him. He was born on Thomas Prosser's plantation around 1776, the same year white men signed their names to the Declaration of Independence. All men are created equal, they said, while men like Gabriel were born in chains. By his teenage years, Gabriel stood nearly 6 feet tall, strong hands, intelligent eyes, quiet confidence. He learned quickly, memorized patterns after one glance, and soon became the best blacksmith in the county. His hammer struck with precision. His work was flawless. Even neighboring planters brought their tools to him for repair. But Gabriel's true gift wasn't his strength, it was his mind. Rumor spread among the enslaved that Gabriel could read. Some said he taught himself by studying the scraps of newspapers used to wrap nails and tobacco. Others believed he learned from Thomas Prosser's son, who once bragged that his servant was clever enough to debate scripture. Whatever the truth, Gabriel saw through the illusion. The words he read were a weapon: freedom, rights, revolution. He realized that ideas could burn hotter than any forge. By night, he shared what he learned in whispers. He told others about a place across the sea called Haiti, where men once enslaved had risen and won. He spoke of the French Revolution, of kings who fell and cities that demanded liberty. To the men who gathered in the shadows of his forge, he said, "If they can fight for their freedom, why can't we?" For many, it was the first time they allowed themselves to imagine such a thing. The plantation was its own small world of cruelty and control. Overseers barked orders. Women worked until their bodies gave in. Children learned early that a mistake could mean the crack of a whip. One summer evening, Gabriel watched as an overseer, a cruel man named Hubbard, unalived a young boy for dropping a hoe in the field. The sound of the whip echoed through the valley, mingling with the boy's cries until the world seemed to stop breathing. Gabriel stood there, jaw tight, hands trembling with rage he could no longer hide. That night, under the stars, he sat alone by his forge. The coals glowed red, like the blood that stained the soil. He raised his hammer, struck the anvil once, and whispered, "No more." From that moment, Gabriel was no longer just a blacksmith. He was a man preparing for war. Over the next months, he began to build a circle of trusted men. Solomon, his childhood friend, tall and cautious. Martin, who worked in the stables and knew how to move unnoticed. Jack Ditcher, quiet but fierce, his loyalty absolute. They met in secret, in the forge after dark, in the woods beyond the creek, in the cabins of the enslaved, where songs of sorrow disguised whispered plans. Gabriel spoke with calm conviction. He told them that they would not rise out of hate, but out of justice, that they would not unalive without purpose, but free the oppressed. He dreamed of a day when Richmond, the heart of Virginia's power, would see its enslaved march not in chains, but in unity. "We will take the armory," he said. "We will hold the governor hostage until freedom is law." To some, his vision sounded impossible. To others, it was salvation. The fire in the forge roared higher each night. As he shaped tools for his master, he secretly shaped weapons for his brothers. Blades hidden in barrels, spearheads disguised as farming tools. He burned with a sense of destiny, a belief that history itself had chosen him to finish what others had started. But even as he planned, doubt crept in. Freedom demanded a cost, and Gabriel knew it might be his life. He prayed quietly. wondering if God would forgive what he was about to do. He wasn't driven by cruelty, he was driven by conscience. In the smoke and silence, he felt the eyes of the world upon him. The hammer struck, the iron bent, and in that rhythm, a new kind of heartbeat began, one that pulsed through every man and woman who dreamed of freedom, even if they'd never lived to see it. The summer of 1800 came heavy and restless. The fields of Virginia shimmered with heat, and the air carried the sound of thunder that never seemed to break. But the storm wasn't in the sky. It was in the hearts of the enslaved. Gabriel Prosser had turned his blacksmith's forge into a secret armory. Each swing of the hammer, each spark of the anvil, carried a silent promise. He and his brothers forged blades from scraps, reshaped tools into weapons, and hid them in hollow logs, under haystacks, beneath floorboards. By candlelight, men who had never spoken aloud of rebellion now whispered oaths. They would meet at Brook Road outside Richmond. From there, they would march into the city, take the armory, and demand freedom for every enslaved soul in Virginia. The plan was precise, organized like a military strike. 3 groups, each with a leader. Gabriel would command the main force. They would strike at night under the cover of a storm. The thunder would drown the sound of their march, and lightning would light their path. By dawn, Gabriel said, "We will be free men." His voice didn't tremble. His men believed him. He wasn't a soldier by birth, but he carried himself like one. And when he spoke, they saw more than a blacksmith. They saw a leader chosen by fate. As the night of August 30th, 1800 drew closer, Richmond pulsed with an unease no one could name. Gabriel's allies spread messages in coded hymns and folded notes. Women carried news between plantations under the guise of visiting family. One whispered verse passed from cabin to cabin. "The Lord will set his people free." Even those who could not join the fight offered prayers, food, or silence. Freedom, once a distant word, now had a date and an hour. Then came the storm, real and merciless. As night fell, rain slammed down in sheets, turning roads into rivers and torches into smoke. The planned meeting point flooded. Wagons overturned, muskets were soaked through. Men trudged through the mud, drenched and shivering, unable to find one another in the chaos. Gabriel waited on the outskirts, standing in the rain with a cloak over his shoulders, his sword at his side. Lightning split the sky above him. To him, it looked like God himself had torn the heavens open. A sign, maybe, or a warning. "Not tonight," whispered Solomon, his most loyal friend. "We'll try again when the ground's dry." Gabriel nodded. He would not send his people to certain ruin. They would wait, regroup, and strike another day. But by then, fate had already moved against them. 2 men, Pharaoh and Tom, betrayed the plan. They ran to the authorities, seeking mercy or reward. Within hours, Richmond was crawling with soldiers. The rebellion, still unborn, was already being hunted. By dawn, dozens had been arrested. Roads were barricaded. Gabriel's name was whispered in fear, by masters and enslaved alike. Some said he had vanished into the woods. Others believed he was still out there, waiting for the right moment to return. But Gabriel was hiding, not out of fear, but reflection. He had come so close to changing history, and yet history had turned on him. For days, He moved silently through the wilderness, hungry, soaked, and exhausted. He prayed for guidance, not for his safety, but for his people's future. And though the rebellion had not begun, the idea of freedom could no longer be contained. It had already escaped into the world, spreading like fire through dry fields. He was finally captured near Norfolk, betrayed again by a man seeking a reward. When brought before the court, Gabriel stood tall, hands bound, but spirit unbroken. When asked if he had any last words, he simply said, "I have nothing more to say than what I have said before. I wanted liberty for my people." The judge called him a traitor. History would call him something else, a spark. They silenced Gabriel's body, but they could not silence his story. The rebellion he built in the shadows lived on in the hearts of those who came after. Denmark Vesey, Nat Turner, and countless others who refused to bow. And in every strike of a hammer, in every song sung softly in the dark, the rhythm of Gabriel's dream still beats, the heartbeat of a man who once forged freedom in fire. The courtroom smelled of wet earth and sweat, the air heavy with judgment. Gabriel Prosser stood before the men who would decide his fate. Iron shackles gleamed against his wrists, the same metal he had once bent and shaped in freedom's name. The judge read the charges: conspiracy to rebel. Outside, soldiers paced, fearful of the silence, fearful of the man who refused to beg. Gabriel did not speak for himself. He did not plead. He only lifted his head and looked through the narrow window toward the horizon, toward the world that could have been. One of the guards said later that Gabriel's calm unnerved them more than any outburst could have. When they asked if he repented, he simply replied, "If I had 10,000 lives, I would give them all for the cause of liberty." The words spread quietly, whispered from one enslaved person to another, until they became something larger, a prayer, a promise. In October of 1800, the sentence was carried out. No drums, no speeches, only the morning fog, the whisper of wind through the trees, and a few witnesses who would carry the memory for generations. Some said the sky darkened that morning, as if the storm that once saved Richmond had returned to mourn the man it had betrayed. But even in death, Gabriel's silence thundered louder than the storm itself. Word of the attempted uprising rippled across Virginia like an invisible wind. White planters tightened their laws. Meetings were banned. Literacy among the enslaved was forbidden. But in secret, the story spread. They told it around fires, in songs, in whispers. A blacksmith in Virginia once tried to change the world. To some, he was a criminal. To others, a prophet. And to those who lived with the weight of chains, he became a symbol, proof that even in bondage, the will to be free could not be unmade. Years later, his story would echo through other rebellions. Denmark Vesey in Charleston, Nat Turner in Southampton, John Brown in Harper's Ferry. Each carried a piece of Gabriel's dream, the belief that freedom was worth everything. Even in failure, he had forged something unbreakable, an idea that no storm, no betrayal, no rope could destroy. 2 centuries later, historians still debate his legacy. Was he a revolutionary? A visionary? A man ahead of his time? But among his own people, there is no debate. Gabriel Prosser was the blacksmith who shaped freedom from fire and paid the price for it. And somewhere, deep in Virginia's soil, Beneath the fields where chains once rattled and hammers once rang, the echo of his anvil still hums, a heartbeat in the earth, forged in defiance, tempered in hope, and unbroken by time.